Parent conferences.
Call the meeting order. Request Howard please the invitation and pledge.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today, we come to you just so thankful, we're thankful partners for being able to celebrate excellence, our children, our staff. We come to you also with just humble hearts, continuing to lift up those that have been in the path of Hurricane Dorian, those that have lost everything, those that are rebuilding, those that have lost loved ones, and those that continue to feel the effects of that storm. Lord, we know that as we come to you each and every day, we ask for your guidance and your wisdom, and that we put you first and foremost when we make our decisions that affect our students and our staff. We ask all these things in your name we pray. Amen. Address the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will be the adoption of the agenda. Second. We move to second to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion passes. We'd like to welcome all the visitors tonight. It's good to see everybody here for good reasons. And this is also time for public comment. If anybody wanted to address the board, this would be the time to do so. So you know, Calvin?
Yes, so we've got some students here, so we always love for our students to stand up and introduce yourselves and tell us what school you're from. So we'll start in the front row, right in front of us.
Hi, I'm Tracy Kaminsky from Wilson Middle High School.
All right, what grade you in, Trace?
Ninth grade.
All right, good deal, so I should add that.
Hi, my name is Cody Baxley from Chiefland Middle High School. I'm in 6th grade.
Second grade.
Hi, my name is Raymond Webb, and I'm from WMHS, 6th grade.
Hi, my name is Cooper Swain. I'm from Chiefland Elementary School, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Olivia Nussel. I'm from Wilson Middle High School, proud Red Devil. I'm also in 9th grade.
Mr. Etheridge appreciates that. I should say, you know, siblings, if you're one of our students too, we'd love for you to stand up and introduce yourself.
Okay.
You know, don't feel like just, you know, looking at some people in the second row that thought they were going to get skipped over.
Second row. Second row.
Second row, yes. Yes. You're a student. Yes, you are.
I'm Emma Smart. I'm from Chiefland Middle High School, and I'm 8th grade.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Also second row, looking down at his phone.
No.
Our son, Wilson Middle High School.
By way of Cedar Key.
And Robinson.
Come on, don't be a baby. No.
All right, third row.
I'm Coburn Hardy from Chiefland Middle High School, 10th grade.
All right.
I'm Brenda Hernandez. from Chiefland Elementary School, and I'm in 5th grade.
All right.
I'm Sarah Harvey. I'm in 5th grade, and I'm from Chiefland Elementary School. This is Caitlin Nessel. She's my little sister. She also goes to WMHS, and she's in 6th grade.
And you're her spokesman, so.
I know.
All right.
Roberta Newsard. I'm from Willistonville High School, and I'm in 6th grade.
Okay.
I'm Trace Green. I'm from Willistonville High School, and I'm in 6th grade.
Keep it going.
I'm Gavin Barley, and I'm I don't know. I'm on West Wing Women's Charter School.
All right, glad you're here.
Good job. We got one hiding.
I'm Alana Horde. I'm from Chiefland High School, and I'm in 12th grade.
Okay.
I'm Chelsea Dank. I'm from Bronson Middle High School, and I'm in 8th grade.
All right.
I'm Emily Yen. I'm from Williston Middle High School, and I'm in 8th grade. I'm Christian Golden. I'm from
Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're here. And that's part of the
Fill in the seats here.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna wait around.
thank y'all for sliding in.
That'll lead us right into our next item, which is the 2019 FSA Certificate of Achievement Award. The superintendent's going to lead that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we're here to recognize some outstanding student achievement. This is not just a good score, but it is a perfect score on the FSA. This goes from whether it's elementary English, language arts, and mathematics, to civics, to biology, to histories, all different scores. We have 16 people recognized tonight for having a perfect score in our district. So how this is kind of going to work, and this young lady right here, Ms. Rivers, will hand up. She's going to be taking some pictures, and I know some other people will too. But we'll call you out by school and come up here, and we'll get a picture of you, and our board member for that school will come up, and whoever else you want to come up here and take some pictures. And I know Ms. Rivers, we're going to try to take a group picture outside, are we not?
Afterwards, all the kids are going to go out. As you leave, if we'll just all go out front, and we'll take a picture together.
Okay. All right. Bronson Elementary School. Christian Bondrocker. Come on up.
I always like to stay over here because I had absolutely nothing to do with it. Yes. You can swallow, you know that, right?
Hey, Josh. Oh, I won't give you a card later.
Well, he can't work for me because he's smarter than me. That's why I'm looking for him to hire me.
And from Bronson Middle High School, and I hope I get their name right, it's Delissi, Delissi, and perfect score on the 7th grade English language arts. Very good. Okay, for Chief Elementary School, we have 4. Okay. And FSA Grade 4 Mathematics, Sarah Hardy. And we have Brandon Hernandez Navarro. And this is a perfect score on grade 4 mathematics. And grade 4 mathematics, perfect score, Cooper Swain. And grade 5 science, Cody Baxley.
So we can all get in.
All right, here we go. So we got some mathletes here.
Who is that?
You good? You good? All right. Good job, guys. And for Chief Middle High School. Perfect score on the biology 1 EOC, Mr. Hardy. Mr. Hardy. Award on the U.S. history. And the U.S. History Museum, Hunter Barrett. I think you got to introduce yourself, all good.
Well, I'm not really a student anymore, so.
You're graduated, yeah, came back, that's great.
Wait, I do need to speak to you.
Good job, man. And for Whispering Winds Charter School, Gavin Barkley, perfect score in grade 3 mathematics. Who's this young lady next to you? Where's she work at?
Can't get away with that. You can't.
Congratulations.
All right, Williston Elementary School. Perfect score on the grade 5 statewide science assessment, Allison Green. Grade 5 mathematics, Braden Muthard. And Ramy Webb, grade 5 mathematics. Right. All right. And last but certainly not least, right? Absolutely. Grade 7 mathematics, Emily Young.
Their parents might be responsible.
Okay,
Civics. All right. And Ms. Nussel, Civics EOC. Very good. Very good. Great. Good job, guys. All right, Ms. Rivers, we have them up.
Y'all want to meet me out this way?
We'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you for everybody.
Thank y'all.
It's like item E is the public hearing for the 2019-25 village budget.
So, tonight we're here to adopt the final millage rate and final budget for fiscal year 1920. I'll review the changes or differences in what was advertised in the paper for our tentative budget and what we are proposing today for our final budget. Most our discussion will simply be a review of what was discussed in late July when we adopted the tentative millage and budget. This is the second and final of 2 public hearings on this subject. This means any member of the public attending these meetings are welcome to ask questions or comment throughout the process. Okay. So we'll start with trim, our truth and millage. This is the first thing we'll discuss as we settle on and adopt the final millage rate for this fiscal year.
So which handout is that?
The final millage with the red house. The final rate that is being proposed is 3.864 for RLE and 0.748 for basic discretionary and 1.5 for capital outlay. In the final millage package, the first page is a copy of our certified taxable value at a little over 2.1 billion, line 4. If you look at line 16, that's our RLE, or required local effort, and this is the number set by the Florida Department of Education to match prior year tax collections. Line 17 shows the rates for capital outlay and basic discretionary. You'll notice that our RLE is lower this year when compared to the prior year on line 9, and it's lower than line 14, which is a rollback rate, so we did not have to advertise for a tax increase. The rollback rate is the rate that would generate the same amount of property tax revenue as approved for the prior year. When the tax base increases like this year, the rollback rate is less than the prior year's rate. This simply means that while the tax value has increased, the local tax rate did not increase. The Department of Revenue set our RLE so that we'll collect no more than last year, and we're estimated to receive over a little less than $12,000 than when compared to last year, or $12,000 less when compared to last year. Again, what we're proposing is a final millage rate of 6.112, which includes an RLE of 3.864, capital outlay of 1.5, and basic discretionary of 0.7480. Any questions?
Move approval of resolution 20-03, doing the required local effort, 3.864, a discretionary operating of 0.748, and a capital outlay of 1.5, for a total of 6.1120.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? It's like I asked, between those 3 line items, required local effort, basic discretionary, capital outlay, from a board standpoint, the only one we would be able to adjust is what?
None of those. We would have to go out.
So we do these here every year.
Capital outlay.
We can't go above 1.5.
Right, we can't go above.
We can go
lower.
We can go lower, yes.
So we do these hearings every single year over and over and to do,
Because trim requires the Department of Revenue and Department of Education requiring.
well, there's nothing we can do about it.
No, but other districts may have some other forms of voter approved. We just don't.
It's not a time issue, I just,
Yeah,
No.
formalities.
correct.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
And along with that, if we don't do the rate that we're told by DOE, then we're not allowed to participate in the FEFT.
That is correct.
That's correct. Okay, now we can move on to discuss the budget. So please go with me to your final budget package. Displayed is the advertised budget or the tentative budget that was $79,036,135. The first page of your handout is the final budget or the proposed final budget, and it is $79,896,015, which is a net increase of $859,881. You'll see most of the changes are due to finalizing the fund balances for fiscal year 18-19, closing out the fiscal year, and finalizing personnel changes and fine-tuning the budget after that second calculation was released. So let's review the changes by fund. So starting on page 6 of the final budget portion of your packet, we can review each changes for each fund. general fund, the revenue, we made some changes in the revenue. We have to recognize the full FEFP, which includes what will leave our district for McKay scholarships, but we have to recognize the complete and total FEFP. So I had to increase the revenue portion of that budget, but there's an offsetting expenditure you'll see as we move down to the expenses. We also finalized the fund balance for the general fund. When you look at the expenditures, we updated personnel changes in the 5,000 function, and that's also where that McKay estimate now sits. And we're estimating about 515,000 lost to McKay. 6,400 function, we had to remove a grant at the time of writing the budget. We didn't know if we were going to get the grant. We've since gotten it, so it will come back before the board as a budget amendment. 7,100 function here, we had to correct benefit costs. They were understated, and then we had to move some expenditures from the 7,200 function up to the 7,100. For the 7,300 function, we updated some personnel changes and increased some supplements that weren't stated correctly. And then 7,800 function, we had some overstated vacancies that we reduced. All of that resulted in a net increase of a little over 338,000 to the general fund. Any questions about the general fund?
On where it says on number 2, finalized fund balance, that means we reduced it. It's reducing.
That, I just had it overstated for the tentative. So we have a lot of encumbrances that haven't cleared and other things that are sitting out there, and we kind of have to wait for all the payroll to be finished and all the AP to be processed before we can finalize that fund balance.
What was this grant that we?
It's the youth mental health awareness and training. And we did get it. It was much less than what we received last year, but I needed to go ahead and pull it from my budget because at that time we didn't know what we were going to get. I think we got about half or even a third.
And the reason being is because before we were sharing that lump sum of money,
Right.
our sum of allocation was 6 other districts. So this year, the directors got together and said, we just need to have our own allocation to make those decisions at the school, at the district level. So each district in the state have their own allocation versus sharing it with neighboring districts as we did this past week.
So what you'll see is a budget amendment that'll come before you where Pam will put in the revenues and expenditures for that grant since it didn't make it final budget. Anything else? I'll move on to the next one. All right, the next one is our special revenue fund. This is our federal projects, federal grants, and our food service. So the revenue portion we had to increase to recognize some USDA donations that we get, and we got some updated grant information, so we were able to update those grants. We also finalized the food service fund balance. And then looking at the expenditures, the change in the expenditures, the net change was a decrease of 57,000, and that was updating some of those federal grant awards. The way the federal grants, they work a little bit slower than my budget, so I just pull last year's numbers over, and then I start trading them out for this year's numbers as I get them. So this budget still isn't final, and it'll be finalized through budget amendments as Pam gets those notifications from grant awards. So this all resulted in a net increase to this fund of a little over 237,000. Any questions? Okay, the next few are pretty easy. You'll see the changes solely came from the fund balance changes. So the next one's the debt service fund. We just had to adjust and finalize the fund balance. That's the only change for that fund. The next page is the capital projects fund. We had to make an adjustment for the change in the fund balance, and then we also finalized some capital projects. But we still just had a net change of 14,000 increase to that fund. And then finally, we have our internal service fund, which is our self-insurance fund, and the only change there is again finalizing that fund balance. Are there any questions on the changes before we move into the actual budget and what we have? Also, you'll notice 29% of those variances just came from finalizing of those fund balances. Now let's review the revenue sources and the expenditures that are contained within this final budget. So let's go to the page with the heading of where the money comes from. That should be the next page in your handout. And these are all our revenue sources, and these are all funds combined. So all those funds we just listed, these are combined. So what we have here is we have our state sources account for 43% of all our revenue sources. And the majority of that is coming from the Florida Education Finance Program, or FEFP. That is the largest revenue source in this category, which accounts for 97% of this source and 71% of our total revenue sources. FEFP funds also include various categorical allocations, and the types of expenditures for those funds the way those funds can be used are generally restricted. Next, we have our local sources, which is 13% of all revenue sources. That mostly comes from the RLE, or from property taxes, and that's 90% of this particular revenue resource. We also have our fund balances, which accounts for 18% of our revenue resource reserves. However, some of these reserve funds are already allocated and unable to be used in unrestricted way. So I'll go through those fund balance by category and by fund in just a minute. And then we have our internal services fund. Again, that's our self-insurance, that's 8%. We have our federal programs, so like IDEA, Title I, those types of federal grant programs accounts for 6% of our revenue sources. Food service is 5% of our revenue sources. Capital outlays, 4%. Interfund transfers, when we have to move resources between funds to usually process an expenditure, that's 2%. And then 1% is our debt services, which comes in the form of our racetrack receipts or revenue.
It's like on our local sources, that's based on property taxes. So that 10,670,1506, that's an estimation. Okay, so what is actually collected by our tax collector? What percent?
That's at 96%.
That was figured at
That
96%.
is figured at 96%.
Okay, all right.
We can't figure it above 90%.
But we're on the hook for 100% of flow-through dollars to our.
That's correct.
Right, right, right. Okay, so this graph just shows us the percent of resources generated by funds. So that was all funds. Your previous slide, the original graph were all funds. So this kind of shows you the funds that are feeding those revenue sources. So 65% is coming from the general fund. So we are heavily dependent on the general fund. We feel any changes in the FEFP because of that. 12% is coming from capital, 10% from self-insurance, 6% from food service, 6% from federal, and 1% from debt service. Okay, this slide breaks down our fund balances by fund as well as fund balance category. The categories are very important because much of our fund balance is not comprised of flexible dollars. And this is important because those flexible dollars are used to pay the majority of our salaries. And as I go through this, you'll see just how much of each one of these functions are used for salaries. So on the original slide, we saw the fund balance makes up 18% of our revenue resources, with these fund balances coming from 40% from capital, 39% from the general fund, 13% from self-insurance, and 8% from food service. However, not all of these reserve funds are available. Some of these funds are already allocated and unable to be used in other areas. So here's a breakdown of the fund balance categories. You have the non-spendable, the very small slice, and that's just our food service inventory. You have restricted. We have all funds feed into this restricted portion because all of your capital would be restricted and all of our internal service would be restricted. And that's almost 65%, so that's the largest portion. Then we have our assigned, which is general fund dollars that are assigned for specific projects. Those are board assigned, and that's 9%. And then we have our 5% minimum, board minimum, and that is also sitting in the general fund, and that's 15% of this fund balance. And then the unassigned is also in the general fund, and that's 10%. So that would be available. where the money goes. I don't know why this dead tree makes me so happy. It's a finance joke, I guess. All right, so the first slide breaks down expenditures by object. And again, this is all funds, not just the general fund. So we have 60% going to support salaries and benefits between employee salaries and employee benefits. Then we have 12% for purchase services, 10% for others, so this would be like subs, your fees, your dues, those types of things. Materials and supplies is 6%, 5% capital outlay, 3% for interfund transfers, 2% for energy services, and 2% for debt services.
Ms. Lake, can you give us an example of what purchase services would be?
These would be our contract. Dr. Hall has speech and language that she has to retain by contract, we can't employ them. So a lot of these are contracted services.
In other words, it's a form of personnel.
Yes. And travel would also be sitting up.
Where would you say, if you add into those, because that's actually going to the salary of somebody.
That's correct.
What would you say our percentage is between benefits, our employee salaries, purchase services? What percentage are we at out of 100%?
I'm not.
Okay, so obviously if you add these numbers up, but I think is that where we're?
Is that what you're at? Yeah,
Yes.
so almost 75%, yes. But not all of purchase services are contracted services. I would have to break that down to you. Some of that is travel, but the majority of that, probably 8 or 9% of that would have to be contract services.
Because the majority of your businesses, companies, or whatever, that's 72 to 80% of your costs. It is usually wrapped in there. So that's kind of interesting.
Right, and we can employ one for what we probably pay, we can employ two for what we pay for one. That would be true. So we just can't, Dr. Hall only uses these in cases when we can't
That's
fill
what
that
we need to do.
vacancy. I hate to use you as an example, but you seem to, you have
It's
some
true,
contract.
we can't find those level of expertise, speech language pathologists or certified behavior analysts, because of the pay. That you go work in the private sector and make twice as much versus coming to the public school system. But we have an obligation to provide services to our students, so that's the alternative.
Which is another reason why the district cost differential is so important. Because we'll never be able to increase salaries to those people, the teachers or whatnot. That's going to lock us in. That's another thing that we have to be careful about. And that's something that the legislature can do something about. So.
Okay, and this second pie graph gives you a detailed view of the employee salary. So I took that employee salary slice, I took it out and broke it down so you can see the types of staff that are making up that 45%. And you can see we have, 49% for the classroom teacher, 24% is going to other support personnel. So those would be, your secretarial staff, your maintenance, your bus drivers. Then we have 10% for administration at the district level and school level combined, 8% to aides, 6% to other certified, which would be the speech and language we have on staff, guidance counselors, and then 3% to substitutes.
I think I have that slide.
Okay, so then the next graph shows expenditures for all funds by function. So,
Ms. Lake, can you go back over those numbers, all the breakdown of percentages?
On the last
The last
slide.
one.
which
we
one,
don't
the
have
employee
that slide.
salaries? Yes, I just made it in my presentation to pull that little piece out so you can see it better.
Can you just run the numbers?
So the 45% is comprised of 49% classroom teachers, 24% other support personnel, 4%. So those would be your maintenance, food service, those types of employees. 10% is going to administration, and that's district and school combined. 8% for aides. 6% for other certified guidance counselors, and I'll break that down in just a minute too. And then 3% goes to substitutes.
So would bus drivers be in the 24 with the
Yes,
service?
yes.
Okay. is like the contracted work?
No, those would be your speech and language, those would be your guidance counselors, those would be your reading coaches. Those are people that don't necessarily direct instruct the student.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so then this is the expenditures for all funds by function, and we can go through that. Now, you guys don't have a copy of what I'm fixing to show you, but it will follow the activities breakdown in your handout. So I went in a little more detail into each one of these functions to kind of break them down and show you by object and by area what they look like. So 44% of all expenditures come from student instruction. So the instruction would include activities that deal with the direct teaching of the students. So you can see 80% of those expenditures go to cover salaries and benefits, followed by purchase services, materials and supplies, fees and subs, and then capital outlay. And then the graph on your right, I pulled out to show you those expenditures by program. So 75% of all those expenditures go to cover our K through 12, our basic education. 17% are for ESE programs or exceptional programs, 5% are for career ed, and 3% is for pre-K. So I thought that was interesting because as you look at our strategic plans, as it develops, you hopefully will start to see some shifts in this, depending on what the strategy is. Next, we have our general support services. This is 15% of all expenditures. Now, this includes school administration, it includes the board, superintendent's office, fiscal services, personnel services, and food services. But 69% of general support services, 69% of those expenditures are just for salaries and benefits, 17% materials and supplies, 9%, almost 10% for purchase services, 3% for fees and subs, and then a very, very small amount for capital outlay and energy services. So if you look at these expenditures by area, you'll see 36% of those expenditures are for school administration, 34% are for food service, 25% is for district support, and 5% is for school board. Next, we have student and instruction support. So this is 9% of all expenditures. And this function provides administrative, guidance, and health support. So you've got the areas of social work, guidance services, health services, psychological services, and so on. So when you look at these expenditures by object, 70% goes for salaries and benefits. They have a high purchase services for the reason we just talked about that. 26% sits in this category for purchase services because these are the expertise that we're having to go out and contract with that we can't bring in on staff. So then if you look at it by support areas, you see that the majority of these expenditures, or almost half, come from guidance services. Next, 19% is for instructional staff training. 18% is for instructional and curriculum development. 12% health services, 4% media services, 3% psychological services, 3% instructional technology, 2% parent involvement, and 1% social work. Finally, we have operation of plant, which is 6% of all expenditures. 52% go for salaries and benefits, but you see a large portion of this is for energy services. We also have student transportation, which is 5% of total budget, and 75% of that line goes for salaries and benefits. Next, we have maintenance of plant. On your handout, it says 3%. That's because maintenance of plant on your handout includes this administrative technology services. I combined them, but I broke them out here for you to see a little bit better. Maintenance of plant, 87% of that is for salaries and benefits. This is where your maintenance obviously is sitting. Administrative technology services. The large portion for this is that capital outlay. That's where the E-rate placeholder sits, and this is what IT will use to make certain capital purchases. Purchase services is high in this category because we had to meet that contract that sits there that makes that high. And 33% is for salaries and benefits. There's not actually a whole person in that function. We have to break up the IT because they cross functions. They have a lot to do with student instruction, our information technology, which is a different function, and then this function.
Can you give me an example of a person that's receiving a salary that would be operational plan versus a person?
Yes,
sitting
operational
on
plan would be your custodian. Maintenance of plant would be your AC, would be, those.
It's kind of what I figured, but I just
Okay.
want to be sure I was thinking.
All right, and then finally, I broke down the general fund expenditures by function, just so I can pull the general fund out and kind of see how we spend those dollars. So 57% is for student instruction, 13% is for general support services, 10% student and instruction support services, 8% operational plant, 7% student transportation, and 5% maintenance of plant. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, so this slide, you pull that from where?
The general fund, so if you looked at your first, you look at all funds by function. So that would be the second graph that says final budget by function. This is all funds, so I just pulled the general fund out of this so you can see how the general fund expenditures looked.
And what would you say of general support services? What's some?
General support, and me. Me too.
Can I have a quick question?
Sure.
So we received or are receiving mental health money from the state, right?
We receive an allocation, it's about $220,000.
So
And
that,
it's earmarked specific to specific statute, how we can spend it.
that's already in here?
That is in there, but it's gonna be hidden in all of those functions. It crosses functions, it crosses objects. It just depends on, it's usually gonna sit in the health services or psychological services, the majority of it. But it can be across objects, because it can be for travel, it can be for contracted services, it can be for different types of activities. And it also sits in our salary line, because it pays for our school set all of this.
Not enough, right?
No.
I mean, social work, 1%.
Well, social work is one of those areas that's hard to
That's another position.
hire and.
Right.
We only have one, and
Yeah.
we've always had two. So we're going into our second year with only one social worker.
That's just not acceptable to me. Give us the money to provide services for our kids, I just think that's.
There's more of a need statewide than we have
Right.
people in those
Right.
positions.
Right.
So we are actively looking for social workers.
Yes,
Can't find one, they're
ma'am.
not, just
No,
not out
we
there.
have. We've interviewed several, but we're competing with neighboring districts and salaries. We decided to go someplace else.
Is there something we can do to be more competitive or that department?
Maybe through negotiations.
Gotcha.
Somebody else. Great.
Like it's been presented.
I move to approve the final budget, adopt resolution 20-04 to adopt the final budget as presented.
Second.
We're moved and second, we adopt the budget as presented for the 19-20 school year. Is there any further discussion, questions?
I would like to add a comment, if I may. I have been on this board for 10 years, and I'm proud to say Ms. Lake's done an excellent job making this a very understandable budget. I can remember a time when we would sit here with just lost in the headlights looks. This makes sense, and I appreciate the work. Thank you.
And I know she works very hard because we have this 3 times, correct?
Yes.
And she tries to make sure she presents it to you 3 different ways.
And is available for questions anytime we have questions, so.
And takes it personal.
And Lord does, she gets lots of it from me, so.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Lane.
Morris Baker, stand up.
Okay, moving along. Item F, you got the minutes before you, on August 27th meeting. Are there any additional corrections to the minutes? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the August 27th board meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move to item G, the consent agenda. I know, I think everyone's had an opportunity to have discussion with superintendent or questions. Now would be time for you to bring any question you have about the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question. So, Mr. Masters, I feel very confident that I know the answer, but I'm going to ask this. How do we go about adjusting these? What's the procedure for the variances and differences in changing bus routes? Can you explain that?
There have been several adjustments to the routes, as you're aware, over the course of the past years. If you absorb a route, for example, in reality, you're not saving that whole route because it's merging into other routes. So basically, we have a program that we use for routing, and then past the program, I ride the buses and see if I can make adjustments to make the time more efficient and still be safe and for the children. And then sometimes we will have a concern about a particular stop, like I went out and looked at a stop today just over a hill. You have to have 500 feet of visibility to be sure that that stop was safe, but the direction the door opens makes a difference. So you always want to offload or load the kids to the right in every case possible. So sometimes the routes are shifted a little because of that. But my goal is to continually monitor the routes and keep them efficient and safe. So we have the program, and then we have the individual ride-alongs that are done.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, sir.
Any other questions, consent agenda? Mr. Master, what time do buses start running in the morning? What time do we start picking up children?
We pick up our first child about 5:35, and we don't have many that are picked up that early. And my goal is to move that this year back to 5:45 for the earliest stop. Now, I haven't created these early routes. These are rural routes, and we've checked the districts around us. Our routes are very similar to the districts around us. So sometimes when you're running, for example, an ESE bus, and it ranges all over the whole attendance zone of that school, then it's going to be hard to get all that in a short span. So we have a few students getting on that early. The vast bulk of our students are getting on between 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning.
I don't have a problem with people getting up early, but some parents do.
It's understandable.
I understand. We had just a conversation the other day, just a pre-K kid that happens to live at our ranch, gets on at 5:45 in the morning, gets off at 4:10 in the afternoon. For a pre-K kid, that's, I'd struck the parent, maybe a good idea to go take that child to school and bring it back, and it's only 5 miles to town, so maybe not.
I rode a route much like that when I was here.
Yes, sir.
Our goal is to make it later possible.
Okay. You answered my question. Any further questions about the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. The superintendent's comments and recommendations.
Just want to recognize, you just approved the articulation agreement with Santa Fe tonight. But we just want to remind you that we do articulate with several other colleges, including University of Florida, and try to keep you abreast of how the kids are taking advantage of the University of Florida doing it, because that's rather unique here in Lee County. And currently, right now, we have 6 different kids doing UF dual enrollment, and a couple of these are taking 2 courses. We've got one tonight here from Chief High School, but you got Xander Robinson there, CRT, Anna Ronchetti from Chief one, Jeffrey, my boy, from Watson. If you don't know him, you need to get to meet him. Smart guy. Michaela Armstrong from Chief one, and Ray Hudson from Chief. They're all taking advantage of the online learning.
That's wonderful.
Like skaters.
That's right.
Yeah, he's the kid that talked to me about, he was last year as a junior taking BC calculus, BC calculus. And I asked him if he knew the difference between the two, because I was just checking him out, and he did, so.
Next level.
That's it.
All right.
Just the good things that are going on in our school. Good opportunities that you as a board went out on a limb and voted on, and as opportunities our kids are taking advantage of.
We're going to start with board comments. We're going to start on this end today, Ms. Brooks. We're going to give you the first shot at it before camera steals all of us.
I know. Thank you very much. You are so kind. Last night I had the privilege to go to a really nice event. It was Chief Elementary's Night to Shine, and the administration just decorated the cafetorium just beautiful and decorated. It was just lights dim and everyone dressed up, and the kids that just had improved scores. It was their night to shine, and they were just thrilled. And I just hope that the kids are inspired and they were honored, and that they continue to have that great feeling, so that they continue to feel good about themselves and continue to push. So it was a big effort on the school's part, and it was certainly appreciated because it was very nice. And so I hope the kids and parents really appreciate it, because it was very, very nice. That was great. And then Breezy, it was brought to my attention that, if the kids could have some more dirt around the roots of the trees, please, because it's a little bit of danger. They would like some dirt around the shaded trees. I think kids just track dirt, move it, but, they just would like some dirt around those.
Yeah, that's what happens to it.
That's right, the roots of the trees, so. But anyway, it was really nice out there. And then Chiefland High School will be having their homecoming parade on October the 4th, and we would like to, as a board, ride together, or, whatever we'd like to do, we'll certainly get that coordinated. And
I've already registered, so y'all just let us know how you want to be.
I'll do that, that'll be great. And then last night, Chiefland Middle High School also had a senior night, and it was an information night, and it was a super big turnout. I did not make that, but it was over 100 in attendance, and it was a really great informative night. Katie Corbett ran that, and I think she does an excellent job, always. So that was wonderful.
Where'd she go to high school?
But she is worth it. She's going to stay. She
Got to bring it up in the right place.
And I've had great reports that both international teachers from India are on campus now, and that they're settled and doing an excellent job at the high school. So, and then also I think it was
several weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we were all sent a request about mental health training. Mr. Weber sent it out and sent a date, and
September 27th.
is
It's
that?
an improvement day. He's going to be providing training at Wilson Elementary School.
Okay, and I think it was my understanding we were all gonna go as a workshop and training. Is that it? We were all going? Am I correct on that? We were all
I
just.
think someone made that suggestion.
We're not. Okay, who made that suggestion? Right, okay.
But yeah, I mean, September 27th or something. I had the email.
I didn't respond, I'll just be honest, so, but, so that is September the 27th.
I think it's actually going to be held here in the boardroom.
Okay.
I know that Wilson Elementary has several paraprofessionals and some new teachers they need to have to receive that training.
Okay, so I got the dates and all on
Is this only, do any of our district level staff go through that?
Absolutely. We all have.
We all have.
Yes, sir.
Just curious on that,
Yes,
so.
sir.
I think
You
we
should in the back too?
Might need to be there that day.
I didn't know if that included those, so, I mean,
Yeah, it includes all staff.
okay.
So that's-
So food
there's-
service,
Food service, we have the majority of our food service personnel trained this last school year. And you have some new school service personnel that will train this year as
I
well.
mean, because those ladies have been doing mental health for a lot
They
longer
sure
before we
have.
even knew what
That
mental
is
health
so true.
was, so, just.
It's an ongoing training. The staff comes and goes.
Generally, it's those folks that interact with the kids.
So I think what Ms. Brookins is probably what she would bring it up is if we want to lead, we should lead by example.
it. Right, that's exactly what I was kind of, referring to, that if, that is what our district's doing, and then, it should be all of our boards.
I mean, I have,
And as a board together.
So Ms. Brookins, I'll bring you here on the 27th through.
ladies, they got.
I will clear my.
Noticing of that.
I do not know if I should have been there.
Hey, Cameron, I don't mean to, say anything negative or anything, but probably you might need a little mental health
I
training.
probably do. I have to put up with you.
All right, let's order.
Okay, and then also one more question, I probably have to just ask this person, but I think I need to refer this to Mr. John Mott. But someone asked me about the tower and the connecting and the moving and how long they're gonna be down and this and that, but they need to refer and call you personally, is that correct?
Who's gonna be down? Service, you mean?
Just, SBIC has their connection on there.
Yeah.
But then that's a year or so and all, but they're all worried, so
They should get in touch with.
they should get in touch.
Yes.
That's what I'm gonna do, I'll refer them and give them his number. That's what I'll do, thank you.
So we didn't contact them and let them know any of,
No, they have not been contacted or anything at all.
Who are they, who's their provider? Is it Swanee Valley Internet? That's probably who they need to be.
No, it
That's what I'm
is
saying,
Swanee Valley.
Oh,
They rent from on that tower.
Sure,
Yeah,
we're on top of that situation.
okay. But I think they just wanna be informed, just with all the school talk and, and building and everything. So they just wanna know who to talk to, and I don't wanna give any miscommunication or anything that's not out, or anything unsure, so I want them to talk to the,
well, they know that we're moving the tower because I talked to
Right.
them and I told them we approved moving the tower. So I'll just go ahead and put it out there because I had a phone call because they knew nothing about it, so.
So they want to know the correct person to speak to. And I said I would definitely find out. I'll give them your number.
That's fine.
Make sure we get correct information. Thank you, that's all.
All right, Mr. Calvin.
Passed out this here, so on Thursday is the day, so kind of look through it and see what would be your kind of top 3 things to hang our hats on, so just to get the way it works. So Mr. Etheridge has been there before, is you get 5 dots to basically go through and put through. So it may move it down to 3 dots, seeing how there's only 12 things, so to vote on, and whichever of those 3 dots get the most. So it would be what the state platform is. So just kind of looking at what would be the way we would like to go, so just kind of looking for a little direction from you guys, so.
On the spot right now, or you want us to
Yes.
evaluate it?
I think that, so just,
Did we, was this an agenda item? And I may have missed that.
It's not an agenda item. I think he's sharing the school SBA platform, and he's asking for some guidance from our board members as to what he should root for.
I would think this is what I'm going to go off of. So number 4 is probably going to be something that will gain a lot of traction. So even though you already see what I think maybe 1.5% was what the budget that was presented to the State Board of Education. So from DOE.
I know, I'll just tell you from number 10, in talking with NEFAC on their legislative platform, they're going to probably carry that charge as well.
And last year, normally that they've, in the last couple of years, they've got it where they tried to have 3 bullet points, 3 things very similar to what we do. And then last year, they came back after the governor's race and added number 10. So that kind of became another 4th item because it had broad.
For example, you have industry search account in the school grade right now. But if it's industry certifications for career classes, or dual enrollment for career classes, they can.
Garrett, I think number 9 aligns with what we've been working on providing. I mean, it's pretty hand-in-hand and straightforward.
I know it's important to us. I will vote for it, but I know it will probably not gain a lot of traction. It will not be the highest thing. If you had to pick, I would say probably 1. And sometimes they get to wordsmithing things and kind of add 1 and 2 together, things like that. And I would say that the mental health. I believe that there is maybe some traction on number 6. That was something that has kind of been a focus that we've talked about. We know that we have people that go into drop and then they retire and, sit around, and sometimes they sit only to then come back after they've waited that year. So we're always appreciative to welcome those people back. So anyways,
And the reality is they can be employed through OPS, which means you pay a lot more because they're paying a contracted service.
Correct.
Mr. Garrett, I read through, all of these, every one of them, I think it's been something we've talked about. I think the line, I'm not going to tell you to take all 5 of our dots and put them on one whole thing.
That has happened before, so where you try and push the needle to get something. And then the only other thing, a couple things, so I don't know if you followed this or saw this. It's just something that I find is, once again, outside of the realm of what in education, but there is legislation that was filed, has both Senate and House, that would require us to provide feminine hygiene products for free to our female students. And so that's, whether that's, and I'm not going to speak on whether that's right or wrong. The only thing that I'm saying is, once again, it's another mandate that's put upon us that, is not, probably will not be funded. So, and we're talking about doing it out of grants and this, and we know how grants work, and I think it's a wonderful pie-in-the-sky idea, because we know that there are students that don't have access to the supplies that they need, and I know some of our schools go above and beyond and provide closets where they provide toiletry items and things like that, and just help out students that are in need. It's just, and note, I just want to commend, we live stream volleyball and basketball games in Cedar Key, and I'm so appreciative of them being able to do that. So, and students do the commentary, so some of it's a little comical. So if you ever get a chance, it's late at night and you're needing something, so find on YouTube. So and listen to the Cedar Key basketball games or volleyball games, so you can kind of catch some action.
How do you find it, Chris?
I will find the link and I will email. So that's it.
Y'all charge for it?
Yeah, no, should. Okay, my turn?
Mr. Asbury.
My turn, all right. The first thing I'll bring up, I really don't know who I need to ask about this. And it was brought to my attention this afternoon, I'd already called about it. I want to ask about it. We have a new computer system at Bronson High School for kids to check in, check out with. Came along with security. The kids that check out for CDE, there is no line for CDE. They have other when they check out, and it drops down, got doctor's appointment, got this, got that, but there's no CDE. So it's showing these kids up as absent. And she's gonna have to go back in and manually change all these CDE students. And if this is happening everywhere in the county, that can turn into a lot of work for, in our case, Ms. Long, Sheila's doing it. I don't know, is that more?
Yeah, it's, I believe you must be talking about the Raptor system.
Must be.
For check-in, check-outs. That's separate from our student information system. The issue you described sounds, it's easily resolvable.
I think it's the case, it's probably easily resolvable, there's just nobody there that knows how to resolve it. And they brought to my attention, I said, well, I'll run across somebody tonight and I'll ask them about it.
She can reach out, we can work with her on that.
Gotcha. Next, this is a tough thing to talk about, but we all know about it. We had a huge tragedy hit us at Bronson High School. But amazing things happen after tragedy. It's been amazing to see, not just from Bronson, but countywide, people come forward to help a hurting family. We got a couple hurting families, not just from Bronson, we got one from Wilmington, they're hurting. But we one great big old family. We might be the biggest family there is when you count all these people. And nobody has done anything that they want to lick a credit for. These are just good, salty-earth people. I'm not a person to visit a hospital. If you might have been in a hospital, I very rarely go see because I don't like those places. But I went on this case, and I saw people there that I already thought a lot of. But then when I saw these people and their genuine care and concern about somebody that they know, and to be a part of that, that just blew my mind. It just made me really proud of everybody connected with me. And I want to say thank you on behalf of the family at Bronson Middle High School, everybody who's done so much for these people who are really struggling. And that goes right on back to having support people there for the kids. Kids were shell-shocked. Because, I've told this to the superintendent before, when the first person you meet when you come into school, got no frown on their face, and it's just down and out, really don't want to be there, man, that just sets the day bad. But when the first person you see has a smile on their face and checks on you, is happy. And that's what Teresa was to a lot of these kids. I mean, she would be that bright shining face, and it's knocked the wind out of the sails a little bit over there, but they're going to get past it through great people. It's amazing how hard times people speak together. Move around. The Bronson's homecoming is also October the 4th, so if you want to ride the good parade, I'll let you ride with me. It's going to be at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I can get you out front
Yeah,
for the parade too. That way
same day.
I think a couple years ago we did that too. And we had a whole bunch of them. It was just terrible. And then on September the 27th, I do need mental health training because, well, that goes without saying. But on September the 27th, myself, Ms. Beecham, and Mr. McCarthy, we've already discussed this. It's a school improvement day. And we're kind of, you do not know how this pains me to say this out loud, but I was inspired by what Mr. Etheridge did in Williston. And we're going to feed our teachers and our staff and our custodians, whoever's there, We're gonna feed them that day for lunch, with the only caveat of that 1 hour lunch break being, you can't talk school. You gotta talk friends, because we have a fantastic thing going on right now between Mrs. Beecham and Mr. McCarthy. They are working together. And Mrs. Beecham they are pushing for both schools to get to an A, and they're gonna sort of that A, and that's pretty cool. So I wanna let y'all know that I'm gonna end on this, and this is mainly for Miss Brookins and Mr. Etheridge's benefit, but I brought this is some interesting statistic that I want to share, and it will probably change. It will probably change here very soon, but this is the current Florida Class 1A high school football standings. As we sit today, Chiefland, which has the mighty John Palmer coaching, along with Mr. Harrell, and all that, and Williston, always a powerhouse. Bronson High School, for the first time in 3 years, won a regular season football game, and we are the only team in Levy County with a victory. Now, I know there will be more victories in those other schools, but it ain't often the old boy from Bronson gets to say. How about that?
Cedar Key's undefeated.
I know. He's looking. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say that Cedar Key High School is the most sportsmanlike team in the county, and so that's why you don't see Chris bragging.
Well, he doesn't brag because he's a Bronson man originally, and he knows I'll take care of it for him. I want to take this one opportunity to say, how about that?
Mr. Randall, I sure do appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Randall.
We should all be proud of where we go.
We are.
That's right.
We are.
Some of us have to talk about it more than show it.
And if, okay, we've had to say this before, we won't let it down. We love every school in this county.
Amen. We do.
But if you will look up here, we are, Mr. Etheridge is a Williston graduate. You are a Chiefland graduate. I'm a Bronson graduate. This good man is a Bronson graduate. This nice lady is a Red Devil. But we represent these towns.
Yeah.
And we like to give each other a hard time. In reality, we pull for each other no matter what. But we have a good time. We have a good time. And that was mine. But I want you to take that with you.
Okay, we're gonna take
That may inspire.
I think as well, I appreciate that, and the competitive nature between our towns is important, because we'll never have that conversation of a consolidated county school again if we keep this conversation.
That's right. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Asbell.
For the record, I like going first, I do not want to follow. I just want to give a shout out, because so often we compare ourselves to other counties and we're trying to figure out how to be the best and do the best. And I think Mr. Edison did a good job handling the hurricane. I'm very proud of how our district handled Hurricane Dorian, because some other counties didn't do it like we did it. So I thought that we weren't overreactive. I was just proud of the way we handled that situation. Yankeetown, the land lab is established and they are up and running with their FFA horticulture team. So that's exciting. They just finished their iReady testing, and the Flicker, which is the kindergarten test, is finishing up right now too. So I want to also say that Yankeetown got their second ESE unit, and it's just done remarkable things for the teachers, the students. It's just such a positive addition to the campus. So good things on Yankeetown campus going on.
Mr. Rich, I have one thing. With our new fellows that we have that have come from India, I hope we'll just take some notes and see. I know there's been some things travel-wise and things to note as we go forward, if we continue this or have these. So things that we learned to help them through this process. So I know that there's going to be some growing pains, but was really excited to see and hear about him over at Chiefland. So the Chiefland went getting in, person picking him up in the middle of the night, they're squared away. So
It's, I just know in conversation with the schools, they really adopted happy to see these gentlemen made sure that we get around and I hear great things. So, it's good.
Let's just leave it in the people.
That's right.
Ms. Allen, or Ms. Asbell, Ms. Kaminsky, what's that? Did that finish your? I don't have a lot. I've made an invitation to Mr. Asbell to come over to listen to the state of the kindergarten in Williston last Friday, and he didn't make an appearance.
Well, I got a call from a mama saying they really need me to come in and motivate these kids, because efforts let them down.
We, 200, right at 200 kids or students last, and I think I shook every one of them, so my hand was sore when we got done. But anyway, we'll tell you something, those bleachers, concrete bleachers in Wilson are steep. And if you don't believe it, you try to get 200 kindergartners up and down without anybody falling. So anyway, it was a lot of staff there. It was a good event. Appreciate the organization. It's always good to look up in the stand and see that much red and white, Mr. Superintendent. And Mr. Asbell, you are correct on I want you to know that we had a game delayed that we're going to play the 21st on a Monday night. We're going to get to play Hawthorne and Trenton one week. So we're not going to miss. So
Awesome.
we'll climb that ladder quickly.
I'll go ahead and put it out
I
there.
will
I sure hope you beat Trent.
I will say this, because we have a new leadership at our football program in Williston, young talent, and I think last count, about 71 players out between JV and varsity. And so he's beat the hallways, and he's got some kids back out. There's no doubt we'll probably need to spend some more time in the weight room between now and next year and some conditioning, but I think our program is headed in the right direction. Again, Mr. Asbell, so Chief, no matter, watch out.
Well, my real reason for bringing this up was I really got to say, it's Chief and stuff disappointed, you know. John Palmer's married to Amy, who's from Bronson. Cliff Harrell is a graduate of Bronson, so I expected more.
Well, I think it's kind of like what Mr. Etheridge said. The kids, he's working on, he's giving them the right condition, and
I have to
it
say,
takes some time.
I went to the Chiefland game Friday night, and I thought a basketball game broke out, so it was 54-53. So
Boy, just keep scoring.
Yeah. It was getting there.
Those are all the comments that I had, to make sure we don't get off into the ditch conversation. But is there any other item of business come before the board tonight? We will have a short executive session after the meeting here. If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
If there are no objections, we will be adjourned.